Let's talk about life insurance through work. A lot of people have life insurance through their employer, whether it be a privately held business or a state or federal employer. But there are different ways that can be configured. So you need to understand some things about it, just because it's important to understand what you have and what some of the pros and cons are. So first is company sponsored. That's a hypothetical, a typical scenario where your employer will say, look, as part of your employment here, we'll give you whatever your annual salary is, we'll give you that much life insurance. And then if you choose to buy more, like 2 times or 3 times or even up to 5 times whatever your annual salary is, you can pay that additional cost yourself. When it's company sponsored and the company is paying for that first part, almost always that is a type of insurance that stays with the employer. And when you change jobs or if you retire, that insurance stays behind and you're not going to have it at retirement or if you move on to the next company. So it's while you're working there only. So it's important to remember that. Another type is where you have an outside vendor that comes in. There's a lot of companies that do that. They come in, it's called a Section 125 plan most commonly, where you can buy life insurance, you can buy the accident, cancer, critical illness, that sort of thing. I consider those to be better than company sponsored. I mean, it's great if your employer does that, but what you get most of the time with those outside vendors is something called portability. That means when your job changes or you retire, you can take that with you. You can continue to pay for it, and many of them will let you keep that at the same price that you signed up for it. So if you signed up for it and then you work there another 15 years and you're paying, $10 a week, it'll still be $10 a week, or they'll just convert it to monthly for you. But a lot of times those are portable, so that's very important. One more point on that in just a minute. Most insurance offered through work, now it is kind of changing. It's changing a little bit in the market out there now. Insurance offered through work is term by and large. It's either an annually renewable term, ART, that means the price goes up incrementally, just almost so much you can't notice it. Sometimes it's just a small increment, but the price goes up every year. That's why it's extremely cheap. Sometimes an outside vendor will offer a term that goes to age 100, which is a great thing. Sometimes they'll allow you to have it paid up by a certain age, so you pay up to retirement and then you stop paying and it's paid for. You're going to pay more for that, obviously. That's also a good thing. The thing to know with outside vendors and portability, which is a good thing, you still have to keep this in mind. The 3% rule and the 100% rule. If you have something that's a term, remember that only 3% of term policies in the U.S. ever pay out. And the reason for that, especially where work insurance is concerned, a lot of people don't keep it. They buy it while they're at work, which is a good thing, but then when they change jobs or retire, they don't keep what they had. Some people do. Some instances where it's very, very, very important to keep that portability, keep that insurance, is something called guaranteed issue, GI. Now, in the final expense world, when we're talking to a broker like myself, and you're buying guaranteed issue, that's a different kind of guaranteed issue than the kind that you get through work. This is a good thing. Guaranteed issue is when there are enough employees, or the company that's the outside vendor that's coming in says, hey, you have enough employees here that we're going to ask 2 or 3 basic medical questions. But you don't have to fit a height and weight chart. You don't have to add, certain conditions aren't going to matter. Where you might not be able to get insurance outside of work, you can get it through work, like with an outside vendor. So that's important to know. Some outside vendors will offer it and some won't. It just depends on the quality of that vendor. So if you can get that and you can't get insurance otherwise outside of work, by all means get that guaranteed issue through work and keep it after retirement, after switching jobs. But I'm going to share a real quick story about 2 people that I know personally. We're going to call them John and Bill. They both died about the same time in the same year, had insurance through work, and they both got cancer. And so what can happen with insurance through work if you don't have something outside of work, especially if it's something that is not an outside vendor, it's company sponsored. You get cancer and you go, okay, you're worried about that, and you start going to get treatment, and then at some point down the line, John and Bill both realized, and this is a true story. They both realized that, hey, this is not something that's going to get better. And more time passes, and they're dealing with it, going to see doctors, getting treatment, and then at some point, they're no longer employed with the company that was paying for that insurance. Or it could, sometimes an outside vendor. People they get caught up in the fact that they've got cancer, they're worried about surviving, and they don't take care of the portability issue. And then at some point they no longer have an employer and no longer have life insurance, and then they die without insurance. So that's one of the risks. Hopefully that's not something that happened to anybody that you know, but it's something that can happen. So it's very important to be aware of those things. So in those situations, and just because of the 3%, 100% rule, I personally feel like it's better to have something outside of work that you're paying, not through a payroll deduction. So anyway, that's some important things to realize about having life insurance at work.